one of the biggest hacks you can get from coaching, mastermind, even, just like content like this is getting the KPI from people that have already accomplished the thing that you're looking for. Because one of the hardest parts about running a business and like building out a new system, because if you've never done paid ads before, like you don't know what numbers to look for. But if you can go to Taylor Welch or Cole Gordon, who've scaled 8-figure companies through paid ads, and they can just give you the metrics that you want to hit, that's one of the biggest shortcuts in the world.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the newest episode of the Stick Talk podcast. This is Members Lounge, which is a segment we do where it's just myself, Big Dan, and Sir Christian. And guys, it's been a while since we sat down and all caught up. I feel like I haven't seen Christian in like a month.
Nope.
The month before that, I probably haven't seen you. And then we were just getting back from our honeymoon, actually, Dan and I. That'll really hook the people in. They're thinking honeymoon.
Yeah, it is June.
It is June. At least the time we're recording this is June. And so this is our Pride Month special Members Lounge edition.
All right, to familiarize everyone as to why he's calling it honeymoon is because we had a big family wedding the weekend before, and then we went to Cabo for Cole Gordon's mastermind. Yeah. The wedding was a great time.
It was your brother's wedding, and he didn't go on a honeymoon, so we went on a honeymoon for him to Cabo.
Had to do with the big bro, couldn't it? But
yeah.
It was a great time. Never been so nervous for something in my life, but crushed the speech. So.
Specifically, the best man speech is what you're referring to.
Yes.
Did you show Christian the video?
I didn't. I actually have to show him.
Dude, you have to see it.
It was good. I went on for like 10 minutes.
We should just B-roll it right into this podcast and just fast forward these guys 10 minutes.
Dude, on the flight up to New York, I was like looking up best man speeches. Some of them go super viral on YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, yeah, yours is fire. It'd be like a fucking documentary. It's so long. It was like they go viral if they're like a TikTok.
I rewatched it. It felt more like a stand-up set. But all the old ads co-signed it. I got like 2 of them who came up to me and was like, dude, I've been going to weddings for 20 years. This is the best man speech I've ever seen. I was also the perfect amount of drunk. I was like 6 drinks in.
Yeah.
Over the course of like 5 hours. So it was a nice little buzz.
Yeah, dude. That was awesome. That was awesome. Bro, everyone was talking about like your hand was shaking, but like you didn't trip on a single word. So like I didn't think you were nervous, but everyone was saying you were super nervous because your hand was like in the video like shaking.
Oh, like I said, I've never been so nervous for something in my life.
Yeah, but I feel like if someone is nervous.
Really, because I wanted to do a good job.
Yeah.
Obviously, I love my brother and his wife, Chrissy. And the sister, the maid of honor, she went up and she had a beautiful speech. It was like so elegant. It was 3 pages, word for word for word. And she was like, what do you have planned out for yours? And I showed her the notes of mine. And literally, I'll show you real quick. It was my brother's senior quote, because like before the wedding, he like memorized what they say in the church. And he kept like repeating it. I was like, dude, what was your senior quote? And he just like spit it out super easy. And I was like, if you can remember that, you're going to remember this. And I just used the quote to kind of like throw people off, thinking it was going to be a serious speech. Said the quote and was like, that's a quote. That has nothing to do with the speech. Just want to make sure you guys were paying attention. And then it was literally like 8 more words, as you can see here. So,
dude, I think that's the best way to give presentations, though, is to like give yourself a pointer and then just riff on that.
Yeah.
Like to recall the story, because then you tell it authentically rather than just reading off a piece of paper.
I was thinking about preparing a Gamma doc and just having someone pull up the screen.
That would be hilarious. And you do like a Loom video with you in the little corner.
doing a cold email was your style.
I would be deathly afraid to do a best man speech, bro.
And there was like,
I would say something that I like shouldn't have said, and I'd be like, oh no.
Well, that's where he did such a good job. He like teetered the line like closely.
It's like that one time when he shit. Oh, I can't say that.
Yeah.
I did make a joke about my brother's wife smoking drunk cigs, which was like, it was so funny because there's like pictures of her parents and her mom's like this and her dad's laughing his ass off at that moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went up to the line. I didn't go across it. I accidentally cussed, which was like the one thing that I promised my mom I wouldn't do. But even that was funny. So worked out well.
Yeah. So that was awesome, dude. That was, yeah, well, like I was saying though, I couldn't tell you were nervous because you did not trip up on your words at all.
My hand was shaking like this the whole time, but my voice didn't crack at all.
Yeah, which is like exactly way more important.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Yeah, I think you went, 10 minutes?
10 minutes, yeah.
10 minutes best man speech. Dude fucking did a VSL.
Ripped it. One take.
Ripped the VSL. But yeah, anyways, just to keep it back on topic, you guys haven't heard updates from us on what's been happening in the business for a while, at least through the format of this podcast. We've had guests on primarily for the last 2 months or whatever.
And a lot of like health related guests. Like we haven't talked business.
And as you can tell, it's not really working.
Yeah.
These guests and what they're recommending to me at least. So we're going to stop because it's really a scam.
Back to business.
Yeah, back to business. Anyways, yeah, the biggest updates are mastermind events. I feel like every time we've done like a mastermind event recap video, people really enjoy it because essentially they get mastermind content. Instead of paying $68,000 a year for Cole's mastermind, they get it for free.
Yeah.
Through our podcast, which we don't make any money off. So we'll go into key learnings from Cole's mastermind event in Cabo, and then Christian was at Taylor Welch's mastermind event in Charleston at the same time we were out in Cabo. And you sent me your notes. There was like 10 pages worth of notes. And so we'll share as much as we can with you guys here on this episode. And then also just share any other updates going on in the business world. And then I want to talk politics and other things happening in the world, but we'll probably save it for another episode.
Yeah.
I think we'll keep this one strictly business, but you'll have to tune into the rest of the episode to find out. I was almost going to wear my MAGA hat.
Jeez.
But I'll save that for the next episode.
No, this is the make cold email great again hat.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Maca.
You got all the deliverability wars going on Twitter right now. People losing their mind. Meanwhile, we just had a client book. What was it? 168 calls through cold email.
168 calls through cold email. That was Anthony and Tag and Client Ascension.
That's in a month, by the way.
Those guys are legends. Yeah, I mean the wins channel in Client Ascension is constantly being filled with wins, specifically from cold email campaigns, and so I don't know.
I think changes like that are good, honestly, because it's just like it calls the herd.
Yeah, I mean we've been in cold email for 4 or 5 years at this point, and we've seen pretty much every change that has happened in cold email. Even the guys who were in it for, let's say, 10 years, like cold email really didn't change until it started to become commercialized and popularized by Daniel, essentially, with his course.
Instantly was a big part of that too.
Yeah, it's just now everyone's doing it. And so obviously the industry is going to change a lot more rapidly. And Christian got us Dean Graziosi for a guest coaching call in Client Ascension. And we asked him the question of like, how have you stayed relevant for so long? And he basically said, you have to have figure it the fuck out ability, which is what Daniel termed. That's Daniel's term that he coined, figure it the fuck out ability. And it's like, yeah, things are going to change, but like your ability to stay in business is how quickly are you able to innovate and figure things out. If you're only running a business primarily on following other people's SOPs and you can't venture outside of that with creative thinking and investing in resources and getting other people's opinions and perspectives and trying your own things out for yourself to like test, does this work or does this work, right? A/B testing. Then yeah, you're not going to survive with changes that are going on. So,
and before we get into the actual takeaways from the events, I think that's probably like the biggest overarching theme with these people that are operating at a super high level, like Dean, like Cole, like Taylor, is they're just constantly innovating and testing new things. Like if something's working, they own the system, they understand how to test something against it. So it's never going to be a failure. Like Nick Abraham, who's one of the smartest cold email guys out there. He's talking about the deliverability issues, and what's he doing? He's testing a bunch of different things against it. The only people who actually go to zero are the people who can't think critically and are just following like one specific step-by-step thing, and then they forget about it and they don't even know how to run the system properly without somebody
and
actually like holding
and
their
then
hand
they
for
declare cold email as being dead.
Yeah,
which obviously is, again, just based on our own campaigns and what clients are doing with their cold email campaigns. Cold email is most certainly not dead, even though I would like more people to think that it is, because it's just, like you said, more business for us. But yeah, actually one of the key takeaways that I wrote down on my notes from Cole's event was he said in his presentation, like the role of a CEO or a leader is to re-innovate systems. So like, yeah, you might have a business that's successful and you're growing and things have been working for a really long time. But just because something's working doesn't mean like it's never going to change. And so he looks at all of his systems. I'm not sure the cadence that he does this, but he said his primarily role in the business now is to look at the system and to think of ways he can change it or innovate it or burn it to the ground and build it back up a better way. And Taylor says the same thing. And so, yeah, I mean, we've heard this from some of the guys that have been around longer than us and have made a lot more money than us. And so I think there's truth to it for sure.
All right, let's get into the mastermind takeaways though, because I'm guessing that's gonna be the title of the episode. So we gotta give these people what they want. I'll start things off, and I think one of the biggest takeaways for me was just how they systemize testing and essentially just creating like structured systems for like perceived creative work, like creatives for ads, essentially, and copywriting, and just like coming up with new ideas for something. Like the average business owner would just be like, oh, okay, I made a couple ad creatives. I'll test them against each other. Then when I find one that's working, I'll just run that until it's not. Or like I'll come up with a couple different like copy ideas for organic content. I'll find one that's working. And then when it's not, then I'll start the process again. And these guys are just constantly testing new things. Because if you get to a point where you're doing something like ads and that thing that was working stops working, if you're spending like $40,000 a day on ads like they are, like you can't afford to have off days. Like you always have to have something sub in. So when it came to the presentation that Cole made on creatives, I think they said it was at least 20 creatives per month per offer. And they've got a whole bunch of offers. And then Spencer, who's your CMO, who's also a killer, he broke down his whole process.
He's a killer at ads, but he's not too good at basketball from what I remember.
Yeah. Well, we cooked him on the basketball court.
You did. I didn't have anything to do with that.
You weren't there. You weren't there. But like for him, just listening to the way that he talks about, hey, this is how I come up with different video ideas. These are all the different variants that I can do if I'm like usually just coming away with one idea in a day, because these guys aren't like super geniuses. They don't have 50 new ideas in a day. They just can have like one idea in a week, but they'll come up with 50 ways to test it that week. And like, even if something's working, they're always trying to beat it. They're not just resting on their laurels and saying, okay, that thing's working. Like, let's just keep it running.
Yeah. It's not like do the input and then if the output's good, stop doing the input. Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think their KPIs were like 620 variations of creatives every week.
Yeah.
Which is like when you break it down by like the first line changes, the headline changes, the actual creative changes, the CTA button changes, the person recording the ad changes. Like there's so many variations. It's insane.
Yeah.
And then I think it's interesting too, because we were at Cole's event, like we said, Cole Gordon's event, and 8-Figure Boardroom is the mastermind. And then Christian was at Taylor's event, Taylor Welch's event. And Taylor has a big focus too on like these low ticket funnels and running ads to them. So Christian, would you hear that was either different or built on these same concepts from Taylor?
Yeah. I mean, their biggest thing was like productize a bunch of different things that you do in business. So like cold email scripts, templates, sales call recordings, sales scripts, books, basically testing like a new thing every month or two that you can sell to an audience to generate new customers. And then like their average conversion window is like 200 days into their high ticket shit. So just like getting as many people into your ecosystem as possible. And then at a certain point they'll convert to a customer, but they're always like, what's the new product? What do we price it? What are the upsells? What are the order bumps? What are the ads? What are the creatives? What's the copy? Like it's pretty high level stuff, but like they're testing, 8 different variables at a time, full time, to try to get as many people into their ecosystem as they can. And at the event, like he asked everybody how they found out about Taylor. It was like, I bought your book. I bought your newsletter. I watched your podcast. My friend sent me your podcast. Like you have to have as many different ways as possible to get your name out there. And then liquidate that attention by basically spending money on ads and then selling enough of your low ticket stuff to acquire new customers into your ecosystem for a slight loss or break even. So pretty similar. But yeah, their whole philosophy is like just constantly get your name in front of more people at a economic rate that doesn't make you lose money.
Yeah. So Taylor put out like a memo today that I was reading that kind of just like put at a high level his thinking about all this. And the title of the memo was like how to never go broke. And basically his whole thesis was stop trying to build funnels, instead build flywheels. And it's the same thing. If instead of just trying to sell one offer, you have to sell an ecosystem. And so you can't just rely on sending people to one offer like Client Ascension. We can't just send people to that one offer. We have to send them to an ecosystem of offers and ultimately get them eventually into Client Ascension, and even after Client Ascension into a mastermind offer. And Myron Golden, even at his mastermind event we went to a month ago, said the same thing. Is like every offer has to sell another offer. So all the guys that are at the top don't sell just an offer or don't put you just through one funnel. They put you through a flywheel or an ecosystem.
Yeah.
Which is a huge
takeaway. One
takeaway.
sales process ends, another one begins. So it's not just like, oh, we have the offer. Like maybe we'll upsell our client if they're doing amazing, or maybe we'll downsell them if they're not qualified. Like, no, they have structure behind each and everything they do. They track all the KPIs, and they're constantly just reworking the process. Like, they just never stop.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. It's very overwhelming to like sit back and like think about it all, but to implement it, it's really not that complicated.
So I think that's a good segue. You're the one who's implementing a lot of this for us. So
in a way, but I feel like I'm not as involved as like someone like Christian and Daniel.
I'm talking about like once they buy that offer from Christian or Daniel, like actually getting them into the next offer, kind of like having that be the first domino for the following sales process.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you said it's super overwhelming. Like, what's the most overwhelming part?
I mean, though, honestly, I feel like the only reason we're able to make all of this work is because we're all involved, right? Like Christian and Daniel built COO method, which is one of our low ticket funnels, basically from scratch. Mm-hmm. And like you and I had really no involvement in that product, right? Like I didn't touch anything with that funnel. I didn't touch anything with that product. And yet it's fully, up and running and live. And we have people buying that product that you and I really had nothing to do with. And then for instance, once someone buys that product or opts into our funnel, they're now a part of the sales process, which you fully manage with the setters and the closers. And so I don't have anything to do with that process either. What I have involvement in is at like a high level, making sure that everything connects and is symmetric to what we're doing with Client Ascension and even past Client Ascension with our mastermind offer. Because like you could have a low ticket funnel, but I think what Taylor was saying is if you drop the ball and you don't get enough people from the low ticket into the high ticket, then you're either going to break even or lose money ultimately. And so working with the student success coaches to continue to do a really good job with the flagship offer to make sure that it's a valuable offer to eventually get someone in. And then once they're in, it does the job to then get them into a back end or a mastermind. That's a big focus. But it's like the only way something like this works is if you properly design your business to have a marketing function, a sales function, and a fulfillment function, which we've talked about many times. And that's a lot easier said than done because essentially all those departments involve a ton of people, and those people then have to be managed and motivated. Like even if we go on a more granular level, like for one of our offers, one of our guys was falling behind on one of their responsibilities to keep up with client fulfillment, right? And so Christian and I talked and we basically implemented a PIP. And so like just having awareness of everything that's going on in such a big organization, especially now for us across two different businesses with ListKit and Client Ascension, that's the overwhelming part of it, is just making sure everyone's showing up, doing their job. And that's never enough. You always have to increase and raise the standards to improve upon that. Like we were talking today, right? Like I had a guy reach out to me through email and the guy was like, dude, your team canceled on me 4 times for a sales call that I had booked in. And like, I didn't have visibility over that until I got the message, and I ended up just having to call them to basically close the deal and basically, like cover the team and let them know some of our systems were breaking or whatnot. But there's just so much going on, and it's really hard to have visibility over everything. But once you have visibility, making sure that the right person knows about it and then can go and implement the fixes. Yeah. So to me, that's like the overwhelming thing is like, as much as you want to control people, you can't. And so how do you manage and lead them to, again, over time, do a better and better job? Yeah.
And that's a really good point. Cause like you messaged me about it and I was like, well, this is the first time I'm hearing of it. So like I'll squash it right away. But that is really kind of like one of the toughest things. And maybe we could speak on this is like, how do you have a functional relationship where you kind of have like full visibility? What's been as CEO kind of like the biggest takeaways now that you wish you knew a year ago? Because we're all different personalities. Like Daniel doesn't like going to meetings in the first place, so it's tough there. I'm somebody who's I would say like good at sales, but I'm not nearly as good at like organization and structure. And like I'm much better now at knowing my numbers. Like I think that's like the number one thing I've improved on recently. And then Christian is kind of like always hopping in and out of everything. Like it's kind of like hard to define his role in some senses. Like what's been, I guess, the number one thing that you found to help you kind of just manage this group of clowns that you got?
Yeah. I think starting with tracking systems and figuring out like, all right, what's the ultimate goal? If we take a step back, what are we trying to accomplish, right? And for us, again, it's really as simple as getting people into lower ticket products, making sure that they get a specific result with any of those low ticket products so that they're in a better position to join our flagship offer, which is Client Ascension. And then once they join Client Ascension, making sure that the systems are in place to help them get results through that offer, so they stay in our ecosystem even longer. And so that's the greater goal. How do we accomplish that? Well, you have to break it down into certain metrics and KPIs. So I've been mapping out kind of like a playbook, like Taylor calls it, for team and leadership. And part of that playbook kind of defines like what every team needs and what every team member needs. So every team needs a team leader, number one. And so one of my biggest responsibilities is finding people in the organization who I identify as a leader. Like for instance, Andy, he's our student success coach, or was a student success coach. Now he's a student success coach team lead. He manages the team of student success coaches. So I go from managing 4 student success coaches to just managing Andy, who manages the rest of the student success coaches. So one, just being able to identify a goal and then find leaders who can then own those goals so I can check in with them instead of every single person on the team. The second piece of that is, so you need a team and then you need KPIs. So, okay, yeah, Andy's the manager of the student success coaches. How do I determine if he's properly managing the team? Oh, he's just telling me he's doing a good job and I see that he's doing a good job. No, that's also something we learned at Cole's event, right? Like how important it is to track CS team metrics, because most people track sales like close rate and how many outbound dials are being made, and with marketing, like what the ROAS is, but what's the metric for CS? And so making sure that there's KPIs defined for that department. And for CS, it's really a matter of back-end conversion rate. It's a matter of how many testimonials are being produced by your students and then how many referrals they're sending you.
Yep.
And so you have to put like actual KPIs to each department. So like it's an action item for people. It's like if you have a sales department, KPIs are as easy as like close rate. What are some other KPIs we track for sales?
Offer rate, show rate, cash collected up front.
Yep. And then Christian, for marketing, what are some, you just sent me one today about like a order bump rate. Like there's really specific metrics tracked on the marketing side. It gets really into the weeds.
There's a lot.
Yeah. Like cost per lead, order bump rate,
Order bump, upsell, core purchase conversion, liquidation, ad spend return, calls booked,
yeah,
qualified leads. Because a lead is not a qualified lead. Taylor told me. It's like a qualified lead is somebody who buys your stuff and is a fit for your high ticket products, which with low ticket funnels is a big distinction, because a lot of people can buy your $19 thing, but maybe like 30% are actually qualified to work with you on a bigger scale. So that's like a big differentiator. Yeah, there's just a lot of shit. That's why I'm like fried right now, but
yeah,
we're good.
Yeah, we're getting super into the weeds, but kind of to pull us back out. So every team needs a team leader, and then KPIs that leader can then hold themselves and their team accountable to doing. And then there needs to be a cadence of team meetings. And then that also needs to be supported by team training. So I had a call today with Wiz of Ecom because he was struggling with one of his departments internally, which is the CS team. And one of the things he was struggling with is they always rely on him to essentially develop the strategy. And that's because, at least the problem I identified with him on our call today, was he was just giving teams SOPs, and outside of those SOPs, they didn't really know how to think critically about the greater goal or the KPIs that were assigned to them. And so a thing that's really helped us in that category, and that's something you do really well with the sales team, and we're starting to do more with the CS team, is giving them access to training by people that are a lot better than us at this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So instead of being like, hey, when you're on a sales call, do all these things, it's like, hey, I'm going to give you access to Cole Gordon's sales training. You're going to learn Cole Gordon's methodology of how to go about doing sales, so that you don't just follow an SOP, but can think critically about how this is actually supposed to be done at a high level.
Yeah.
And so I'm a big advocate for, and Taylor said the same thing, is like, don't over SOP your team. Like if you give your team too many SOPs, they're never going to be able to think critically outside the box, and you're not going to have a team of leaders. You're just going to have a team of essentially VAs. And so if you give your team access to high level training, they could then see like what it looks like at a high level and what the goal is, and then figure out the best way to get there without you needing to have an SOP for every which way there is to get there. And so rather than this person's now stuck at like, I don't know what the strategy is, they're getting training from Cole Gordon or Taylor Welch in our case, as to like, here's how these high level guys think about it. So you need to give them access to team training. I think outsourcing your team's training is probably not talked about enough. And it's something that we've been doing for a long time. Even last summer, we gave our CS team a book club. We did a book club and we read a book called Unreasonable Hospitality. And that book, it was having nothing to do with a coaching program. It was all about running hospitality in the restaurant business. But the concepts and the themes of that book could then be applied to their specific role within the coaching organization. And I think that's really important, is rather than here's an SOP on how to handle this situation, it's like, here's a truth or like a fundamental aspect of running hospitality or customer success in general. Now apply that to the situation you find yourself in.
Yeah, I think that's the big takeaway is like you need to teach your team how to think.
Yeah, not what to do.
Not what to do. Matei, who's the guy who leads the setter team over at Cole Gordon's thing, said the same exact thing. And I was like, dude, it's such like a small tweak, but it's fucking genius. Is like when his setters aren't making enough dials, instead of doing what every sales manager did, including like what I used to do before hearing that presentation, is I would just like not yell at them, but just send them a message like, dude, you're at 80 dials a day. You need to be at 100 to see success. Make more dials.
Well, what is that? Essentially, it's micromanaging.
Yeah. And all he does, like the smallest tweak, is he just asks him like, hey man, you didn't have enough sets, last week. Like, why do you think that is?
Yeah.
And he will basically coach them through and like basically make them come to the call saying, oh, I know I didn't have enough sets. I didn't make enough dials. Or the reason why, this many dials didn't lead to the projected amount of sets was because my conversation to book ratio wasn't high enough. So in order to improve that, like they'll just start to explain the same exact things that you would, and you can actually have people that think on their feet and can improve the performance than you would see if you just had, like you said, an army of VAs working for you.
Bro, and I think A players are not like A players from the jump. It's like you create A players based on your culture and how you are as a leader. And that example is a prime example. Another one is like, for instance, like one of our guys, Lewis, like he finds himself in a lot of situations that I don't have SOPs for. Like a client messaged me this, what should I say? And I'll just flip it back to him and be like, what do you think you should say? Yeah. And then send me whatever you come up with and I'll give you feedback on it. So rather than doing the work for them, which again is micromanaging, which you cannot do at this scale. It's impossible to micromanage 40 or 50 team members and all the different functions of the business. Instead, you have to give them more, I guess, room to think and grow on their own, and then be there to review and lead, right? And to teach and to coach them. It's more of a coaching thing than a micromanaging thing. So yeah, it's kind of like into the weeds, a topic about like management and leadership. Rather than telling people what to do, tell them to do what they think they should do, send it to you for feedback, and then coach them through it.
No, I mean, it's super necessary though, because one of the main objections that we'll get on client Ascension calls is, hey, I don't have the time for a coaching program. And we'll be like, okay, well, how about your team member who's supposed to be helping you with lead generation when you get no calls? Does he have a little bit of extra time? Because you guys aren't booking any calls, so he should have something to do. And they're like, oh, well, yeah, he's got a bunch of time. Like, okay, why wouldn't you put him through this training? Not only are you going to get more out of your investment here, you're going to get more out of your investment in that employee. And if they actually can structure a system, like now this isn't just somebody that you hired to help you out with lead gen without having any systems in place. This is somebody that's capable of generating you new business and knows how to think about all of it, because instead of just following some like PDF, like he went through, he talked to coaches, he understood how to think about it critically. Like that's somebody who could be with you for a long, long time, can be a major asset in your business. So it's just like an overarching thing. Like your team will only be as good as the education that you give them. And it doesn't have to be the education that you create. It can be from other people.
That's like
from
such a hack,
video or anything
such a
else.
hack.
Yeah.
It's such a hack to be able to onboard a team member and then send them through hours of training from someone else that we know is a lot better than we are.
Yeah.
And so I think it's an ego thing too.
Yeah.
But I also like hiring. This is also why I like hiring people that are like fresh or new to the role that we're hiring for, right? I think there's a debate to be had of like, do you hire someone that's super experienced and has done this exact role at a high level in other organizations, or do you hire someone that has potential and is a really good culture fit? I always opt to hire people who have potential and are a good culture fit, because then they're not stuck or fixated on a specific way of doing things. They're open to like learning the best way through trial and error that fits what your organization is really trying to accomplish.
Yeah. The only caveat that I would put on that is, and this is like very specific to sales. I want to find somebody who's already done something previously that proves they're capable of doing that thing.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, I don't need them to have crushed it for another coaching program in order to hire them at Client Ascension as a closer. But I want them to already have some experience where they've collected a lot of cash in a given month, right? So like maybe I worked in software sales, but I've already shown that like I've been able to close deals and like get over that initial fear that people have of just like closing and asking somebody for money and kind of holding them accountable and force them to make a decision that's best for themselves. Or like if you're hiring like a setter, doesn't need to be somebody who's ever used like our specific systems. But if I ask them about a previous story and like a previous job experience, or put them through a hypothetical about like what they do when, you know, there's not much structure, and like how they think critically about getting in touch with a new person who doesn't know about the company yet, which is really what the role is at its core. And they can like walk me through that and like give like a smart, educated answer. I'm like, okay, this person hasn't done the thing yet. So they are like fresh and new, like you said, but they've done something previously that proves they're capable of doing that. I think that's like the only thing that I would say is like, make sure that they're not completely fresh and have never done anything in their life that they're able to persevere a little bit.
For sure. Like with Antoine, dude, he was a Walmart greeter. Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
So Antoine is our setter. He's been with Client Ascension for longer than anyone's been on the sales team. And that's impressive in itself because setters don't really have a long shelf life. A lot of setters churn. But Antoine's been in the role and he's been crushing for us for a long time. And when we hired him, he was a Walmart greeter, which if you think about like what a Walmart greeter is, like they're like basically greeting miserable people that are walking in and out of Walmart.
Yeah.
So he's approaching them cold. So like how much easier is it to then call up someone that just opted into your landing page that already showed some intent that they want more information and to have the conversation, right? If you're a Walmart greeter, what do you have to be good at? You have to be good at having a conversation with someone that you don't know and essentially like just give them a good experience. And that's like, it's not the exact thing that the role is, but it, to your point, it was like, he wasn't fresh to like having conversations with people on the phone and walking them through.
Yeah. And you give him some tests before hiring him. Like we had a mock call. He messed up a bunch in the mock call. We asked him, you know, hey, why do you think you messed up? Instead of just telling him the answer, like, oh, no. Actually, you should say this, which obviously you're going to have time to do if you're training an employee. You say, hey, like, what do you think went wrong? How did you feel about that conversation?
Yeah.
What do you think you could have done a better job on it? And if they answer in a way that shows they can think from first principles, then you're in a good spot.
Bro, it's the hardest thing in the beginning, though, like going back to when we first started to hire people. Like my tendency was always to go in and like fix things or do things for someone.
Yeah.
Like the hardest thing to go from running every function of the business on your own to then starting to delegate and outsource and to build and lead a team is really just to get out of your own way.
Yeah.
Or really to get out of their way, because a lot of times they're doing something, you see that they're doing it wrong and you don't have the patience for them to learn. And so you go in and you do it for them. And now you're mad that they're not thinking on their feet and they're always requiring your time and attention and input on certain situations. So it's also a patience game. Like it really is. Like everyone that we've talked about so far, like Antoine and Lewis and Niall and all the guys on our team, we've been working with them for over a year at this point.
Yeah.
And it's like an everyday thing. Like we're talking to these guys every single day. We're meeting with them every single week. We're training them every single week on new materials we have access to. And so it's a patience game.
Yeah. I mean, I do copywriting, so it's like a lot less like black and white than sales training because it's like you close a deal, you didn't close a deal. So it's a lot more hands-on. It's like getting on Slack or Zoom and being like, yo, write it like this, write it like that. This is missing, right? So for me, it's a lot more of an ongoing practice as opposed to like, I don't know, with sales. It's like you close the deal, you didn't fucking close the deal, like fix it. I don't know. That's just how I feel about
I don't know. I mean, sales is a ton of ongoing stuff too. You got to do code reviews constantly.
Yeah.
And there's just always a different type of prospect. Like it's helpful to think in terms of like just boiling down to everything into like, hey, it's like either an uncertainty objection or a logistical objection. But like in reality, you have like 80 forms of each of those type of objections. But to your point, or to Andre's point, if you're like, oh no, if somebody is objecting to like this because of their partner, like this is exactly how you handle it, or this is exactly how I'd handle it in this situation. Because that was my tendency first off, is like, no, dude, like here's exactly what I would have said and it would have worked.
Yeah.
It's not helpful at all, because they're like, okay, thanks, Dan. Like,
And then
Yeah,
they'll
yeah.
just
I'm never
use
going to
that.
approach that same exact prospect again. So that's really helpful to just basically say that you're better than me and
Yeah.
give me what you would have said in the moment. Because it's always easier to play armchair quarterback. Like, oh, that guy was open. Like you should have threw it to him.
Yeah.
Instead, like you got to teach them how to make reads. Right?
Yeah.
And like say, okay, why didn't you think this went well? Get their thought process. And you're more so just training them on the thought process itself.
Yep. And something that we recently learned and started to implement, and this is like a lot more advanced for people that have teams that are either growing really fast or are already bigger, is like we cannot go. And one of the things in my playbook is like you have to have one-on-ones with every team member every single week. And like I can't do that for every single team member. You can't do that with every single team member on sales, right? You have like 8 or 9 people now.
Yeah.
And so what you can do instead is have them meet with each other and then report to you, you know, what the takeaway is or what the agenda of the call was. And so coordinate one-on-ones amongst your team. And this is also a huge hack for new employee onboarding. So like we hire for a lot of the same roles. We hire onboarding specialists at ListKit. We have 3 now. We're hiring for a 4th. We just hired our 3rd strategic advisor at Client Ascension. We've hired multiple closers at Client Ascension, multiple salespeople at ListKit to speed up their onboarding process rather than sitting with them, just you and them. Put them on calls with all the other people that are in that role. And they're going to be able to train and onboard them a lot better than you are because they're in that role themselves.
Yeah.
And so that's like a huge hack that I started to figure out is like when I onboard a new strategic advisor, yeah, I'll get on calls with them, but I'm going to send them on calls with all the other strategic advisors more than they're getting on calls with me because they're doing the role every single day and can speak to all the nuances of what the role is going to experience.
Yeah. Like that's literally all I'm doing on my meeting on Friday. I had each and every rep review another rep's call. And I'm just going to take the feedback and literally just on an open team meeting, give feedback on the feedback.
Yes.
And it's such a hack because it literally is like 10 hours of work that I didn't do. And I can give the team so much value as just like how to think better about selling this specific thing. Cause of course I understand how to sell well, cause you know, I helped build it in 30 minutes, right? It's just like such a time saver.
That's the best way I think to manage teams at scale, is to get them talking more. Because if you think about like remote teams, it's a lot harder to kind of visualize it. But like if you're in an office space and the sales team is there, like they're talking to each other all day, even if you're not in the room.
Yeah.
And so that's how it should be with remote teams too.
We need an office.
Yeah. I would love to have an office, dude.
Bro, we have people like all over the world.
We need an executive office in Tampa.
Yeah.
Us and Pete, come on.
Yeah.
Host events there.
It'd be dope.
You'd spend as much in event fees as you would in office rent.
It would be dope. I'm sure Antonio would co-sign on that.
Yeah. He said he would.
Yeah, Antonio's a G, dude.
Why? It's like a smart move.
Yeah, oh yeah.
No. Like he said he would be down to like get an office space with us.
Oh, yeah. Let's do it.
We got a lot of people in Tampa that would benefit from that. And once you do it too, you attract a lot more people as well. It's like, yeah, we have people here now that would benefit from it. But once you actually have it in place, like now people actually start actively making an effort to come out and visit and spend time with us and do trainings in person. And it's just another perk that you can offer to your team. But yeah, I think that's a good conversation for people of like broader leadership and team management, because it really does get tricky at scale. And all these things like you're going to be forced to do. It's either you do those things or you don't grow. Like there's no in between.
Yeah.
Like you're forced to do all these things that we're telling you if you want to continue to scale and grow the business. Like there's just no other way, because your time as now a team leader or a manager is so limited. You have to optimize. You can't spend more time. You have to just optimize the time you're already spending. So if you're micromanaging and doing tasks that are just really low level, the team's never going to develop and grow and improve. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So giving them access to trainings, having them meet with each other, and like how you spend time on meetings too. It's like you don't want to hop on a meeting and just micromanage and point out things that you would do that they're not doing. It's like you want to have something to review and teach higher level concepts that they can then go implement, talk amongst themselves, and bring back to you with feedback. And one of the other things too in terms of like having visibility on what's happening across your organization is you should have end of day and end of week type forms. It's such a simple thing, but like it's a way of them kind of checking out for the day and also summarizing everything that they're experiencing. And the most important question in those type forms, at least for me as like a manager, to kind of like figure out what needs to be addressed or what needs helped, is the question that is like, what was the biggest bottleneck or problem that you ran into today that you need my help solving? And they'll tell you like straight up, this didn't work, or this team member was being slow about this. And then you go in and address that specific problem and you can continue moving along rather than trying to like guess where the team needs to be helped or what they're stuck with. They'll literally tell you if you ask the question at the end of every day.
Yeah. One thing that I think would be cool that we should implement is some sort of like anonymous feedback loop for all team members and employees. Cause like sometimes I'm reading through those type forms, like you have a sales guy, usually there's like one or two types. There's really not many people in the middle. It's like either one, like the guy who just complains about lead quality and you're just like, all right, buddy, like the leads aren't bad. Like you're just not great at this yet. It's okay. You got to get better. Or like two, the guy who's just like, I could close everybody, which is also like great. But like if there are bad leads or there is like a flaw in the system, like tell me. Like people are almost like, because their name's attached to it and it's like a public channel where the type forms are coming in, it's almost like they're kind of pandering one way or another to be like, oh, it's not my fault, and just like displacing ownership or having like extreme ownership. So I think that'd be cool, is just like a way for people to give like anonymous feedback each and every month on the team.
Yeah, that would be a good idea, actually. I like that idea.
It's like old school management where they used to have like a Dropbox where like
submit your suggestions or whatever, like a suggestion box.
Yeah, it's like that, just for online businesses.
I love it. So what else? Takeaways from Cole's event or Taylor's event specifically?
Dude, I mean, it was so, for me, the takeaways were like so specific to what we do that it's hard to like give something that would be palatable and like make sense to most people watching. But I think the takeaway from that is just like one of the biggest hacks you can get from coaching, mastermind, even, just like content like this, is getting the KPI from people that have already accomplished the thing that you're looking for. Because one of the hardest parts about running a business and like building out a new system, because if you've never done paid ads before, like you don't know what numbers to look for. But if you can go to Taylor Welch or Cole Gordon, who've scaled 8-figure companies through paid ads, and they can just give you the metrics that you want to hit, that's one of the biggest shortcuts in the world. For example, Cole and some other people in the industry are testing like requiring a phone number opt-in or not requiring a phone number opt-in for an ad. And if we were to test that, we'd be like, okay, well, how do we know if it works or not? It would take us months and months and months and months
to compare the
data and concretely say, hey, this is the winner. Or you go to an event like that, and I asked him, just like stepped up to the mic in a Q&A session, and he's like, oh yeah, well, I knew it worked because it led to 40% reduction in cost per book call, and with like the offset that the setters had in terms of calling those leads, since we didn't have the phone number, that was worth it. Something super simple like that, but now I'm like, oh shit, that's perfect.
Yeah,
now I can go to
test
Daniel
it on your own, just confidently implement it now.
Yeah, and I can go to Daniel and say, hey, when you do run the test, this is what you look for. If it's reducing the cost per book call by 40%, that means it's worth doing it. We should stick to no opt-in. If it's not, then we should be able to get more out of it with having the setters in place with the regular process.
That's important too, though, because I feel like a lot of people will take that feedback point blank and say, oh, Cole said this, so it's right. Rather than, okay, Cole said this is what he was measuring for. Let's see if it measures the same for us, because not every business is the same. Like, yeah, it might work for Cole, but it might not work for us.
Yeah.
But the fact that you know how to measure if it does work or if it doesn't is what's important there.
It's the same thing we've been talking about for the past 30 minutes. Like, he's teaching you how to think about the test itself.
Yeah, rather than just telling you.
You still have to run and do the fucking test, right? But like that stuff is just such a shortcut. And like for anybody who wants to join Client Ascension, it's the same thing. Like, what KPIs that we look at when we were testing things to scale an agency to 6 figures a month.
Yep.
Just that alone is like the biggest shortcut you can have, in my opinion. It's just like, okay, yeah, I'm doing all these things. You can tell me to send cold emails. You can tell me to run paid ads, but like, how do I actually know if it's working or not? What numbers do I track? And that right there, if you can just get that part of it spoon fed to you, just like knowing how to properly test and what angle is the winner, dude, it saves you months and literally tens of thousands of dollars of testing.
Yeah. Dude, I love being in like masterminds like that and just being able to like ask questions of just like, hey, what is your thoughts on this? Like Christian, for example, today you just threw in a bunch of stats from one of our low ticket funnels to Taylor's community, and their CMO literally within the hour responded, hey, this is the benchmark for what you're asking about. And if you're not hitting the benchmark, these are the two levers you can change to get closer, right? It was about order bumps, and a big part of the order bumps not being fully aligned, at least with the copy, to what the core product was in the first place. And that's why it wasn't converting at the KPI, or at least that's what he said to test to see if it improves how well the order bumps were converting in comparison to their KPI for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say my biggest takeaway is like both contradicting and in agreement with Dan is that you need to be an independent thinker enough to test whatever you want. Like just because Cole and Taylor have done it doesn't mean that that's like the gospel. But at the
but if they have, it's probably
but
worth
at the
testing.
but at the same time, when you're testing stuff, it's good to know what a good outcome would be. So like test whatever you want, but make sure that you're actually seeing a material improvement. So like know your numbers, but like test whatever you want to get to that number. That's what I would say.
Yeah. And I think going back to the original question of like, how do you have visibility over the entire organization to make sure everything is on track to hit the greater goal? It's like having a CEO dashboard that every single week on the founders meeting or the team meeting, you show up and you put in your numbers for all the KPIs that you deem important to getting you to the greater goal. And if those KPIs are not improving based on some of the actions that you're implementing or tests that you're running, then you either need to run new tests or just go back to the drawing board essentially. Right. So yeah, it's figuring out the right inputs and seeing that they actually have an impact on the important outputs.
Yeah.
Right. But getting clear on what those outputs should look like is going to help you decide what those inputs or whether or not those inputs are working the way they should be. That's what's really important. Because if you do something and you don't know why it works, then it's as big of a failure as it not working at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that I just had that wasn't like presented at all, but you could just notice it in the room is you need to find a way to make the work fun, no matter what it is. So like with Cole's company, like you could see all their employees are there. They're having a great time. There's an open bar. They're shooting the shit. They're playing pickleball. They're playing basketball. They're laying out by the pool. And like, that's awesome to be part of a team that like makes a conscious effort to give everyone like a break and just make the thing a little bit more fun. And I think the thing for me that was really a big takeaway is, okay, like next time we do a mastermind event, like I need to make a conscious effort to get everybody there. Right. Like I need to make sure like, yo, Pete, don't go out of town. We have this event, like stay in town. I need to see, okay, how can we get Antoine down to Tampa? You know, shit, Roy, if I can get him across the world, like I'll make an effort to, because it is just like so much more worth it to have people really bought in on just like the team that they're working with and not just the thing that we're doing. Because if it's just like, yo, update HubSpot, like, dude, it's so fucking boring to do that. Like if I don't understand like the mission and why like I'm doing what I'm doing and like what it all leads to and the people that I'm surrounded by that it helps, you're just not going to do it. Right. It's just like, it's too monotonous to expect people to do for you. And you have to take a step back and be real. Like, would I do that thing myself if I didn't understand it? And I was kind of just like siloed across the world working at a remote company. I probably wouldn't. I would do everything in my power to try to not do that.
Yeah. What did Cole, one of the biggest one-liner takeaways from Cole actually was talking about like having a downsell and why they got rid of all their downsells.
Yeah.
And the reason in the one-liner was a closer is always going to sell the easiest thing to sell.
Yeah.
So if you give them an option that is a downsell and cheaper than all the other options, that is the easiest thing to sell. And therefore they're going to sell the most of that thing.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, like it's just natural tendency to do the easiest thing, what has the path of least resistance. And so, yeah, same thing when you assign action items and tasks that have high resistance, like you're saying, like updating a CRM, you have to give real motive behind why that is going to lead to a certain outcome that they actually care about, or how that's going to impact a certain team member that they might not care about until they spend the time with that person at an event or in person. Right.
Yeah. Like the amount of times that I've had to tell them like, yo, this, that list kit, like fill out the type form was crazy. And it wasn't until I just started bringing in Qasim and just being like, dude, Qasim's a great team member. He does whatever I ask him. You make his life fucking miserable. Like, do it for him. Like I've told you enough, and obviously you're not doing it for me. Like, just do it for him, because he literally can't do his job without you doing this small thing that takes away 10 minutes of your day, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the motive. The motive is not do the type form because I said so. It's now because you're affecting this other team member's ability to do their work.
Yeah.
And affecting their experience here at the company.
Yep.
So yeah, it's another huge lesson with leadership and management.
And they want to do it for Qasim because he's a nice, selfless team member that, helps out anybody whenever they ask.
Yeah, you have to tie certain things you ask people to do to like a greater motive that isn't just do it because I said so.
Yeah.
Or do it because it's gonna help. It has to like tie specifically to a team member or an outcome that they have some buy-in to. Anyways, so this is a really good reminder for people watching. You've probably watched some of our podcasts before and are familiar with Client Ascension and everything we do over there. We're hosting our next in-person event in Tampa on October 25th and 26th. And so you should all be there. There's videos all throughout our social media profiles showing what the other events look like. I mean, they're all bangers. I think we do a really good job with the part that Dan mentioned of like just allowing people to come and kind of detach a little bit from work while still getting better at the work that they do, just by creating fun environments. Like we're going on a boat, we're doing really nice dinners, cigars, all that sort of stuff. So October 25th and 26th, annual Client Ascension event is going to be a banger here in Tampa. There's going to be over 100 people there. Lots of good speakers. I think we're bringing Taylor Welch back to give a speech. We're bringing one of our good friends, Jeremy Newsom, to give a keynote, who's awesome. And so, yeah, if you have a business and you're watching our podcast and you're a fan of anything that we're doing, you have to be at that event. Like, it's a non-negotiable.
Taylor Welch, 8-figure entrepreneur. Jeremy Newsom, 8-figure entrepreneur. The boat.
It's an 8-figure boat.
Huge fucking boat. 8-figure boat.
It's probably an 8-figure boat, right?
Definitely is. It's like
180-foot yacht. Would go for 8 figures.
Yeah, it's like close to the size of the Titanic.
Yo, chill.
No. But looking
Don't
back,
say
the
that.
Titanic wasn't that large. That's what they don't tell you.
Don't say that.
Okay, it's not as big, and we're in Tampa. There's no
What
ice.
if everyone can't swim, bro?
AJ can't swim. Are you going on the boat?
I'm going on the boat.
Exactly.
I have life jackets, bro.
Also, let's just sell the event a little bit. First off, there's no better use of company funds than going to an event. Why? Because like you said, it makes you care more about the community that you're in, but you also have a great fucking time. We do an excellent job of making sure that everybody has a good time. And I've gotten this feedback at every single event that we've hosted is like, wow, like you guys really make an effort to take care of everybody, to reach out to them. So there's no like weird guy in the corner with his badge that doesn't talk to everybody. Like, no, everybody's getting help. Everybody's interacting with each other. Everybody's a friend. And it's the most fun write-off you can possibly have.
Yeah.
Plane tickets, write it off. The food
Hotel.
that's included, the hotel, everything.
It's a write-off.
It's the write-off of
It's
the year.
the write-off.
Time Magazine said Client Ascension 2024 Mastermind event is the write-off of the year.
The write-off of the year.
Literally, I just got the text a minute ago from the editor. Yep.
I love it. Yeah, dude, it's a business trip. It's like if you haven't taken a business trip ever, then this should be for sure your first one.
If business trips didn't exist, I'd just get a job.
Yeah.
It's what makes it all worth it.
Think about it. What's like the best part of running a business, especially like with us as a group, is like the trips we go on. Like you just went out to Charleston. We went out to Cabo. Honestly, though, Cabo is fucking overrated. I will not go back to that place unless it was like.
I mean, it's as good as a resort unless you want to. You don't want to leave the resort.
My whole ethos on like Cabo is it's as far away as Europe. So like if you're gonna go on a trip that far away, you might as well go to Europe.
Yeah. For us, it's tough. I mean, they've got a big team in Arizona. So obviously,
Arizona,
like,
California, it's just right across. But like, yeah, for us going on that long of a trip, I would have much.
We also had the
go to
worst
Europe.
travel experience back ever.
Oh my god,
That was fucking unbelievable.
That was
we got
awful.
held hostage on the plane. We were on it for what, like 10 hours?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We were on a plane for 10 hours. If I'm on a plane for 10 hours, I want to either be in Lebanon or in Europe. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be in Cabo, bro. And yeah, I was just not very impressed with Cabo in general. Like the food was ass. compared to the States. It was all inclusive, but like, okay, cool, all inclusive. But if all the shit that is inclusive is ass, then like,
Yeah.
I don't care. It's like,
Funny enough, not to be like stereotypical, but the only good things were the tacos. The tacos were
Yeah.
good, and then just everything else. Was like,
yeah. And that one chocolate dessert that last night was fire.
No, the pear potato.
So weird, bro. Yeah, it was interesting, but I sound super privileged saying that, but just full honesty, I did not enjoy Cabo nearly as much as I thought I would. I was not very impressed.
Yeah.
I think like St. Pete Beach is probably a nicer trip at like the Don Caesar or whatever. Would probably be a
beat
nicer
that.
trip.
Charleston was cool.
Yeah, Charleston looked dope. It's like a kind of like a historic city, isn't it? Kind of like older vibes.
Yeah. Still, let's just say it's a haunted city.
Haunted?
Yeah.
Really?
We went on a haunted horse ride, and they told us about all these hotels that are haunted there.
As part of the event?
That was like the secret excursion.
That's cool.
Yeah.
See, how many times in your life are you going to be able to write off
A haunted horse tour.
Never.
It was the adult tour.
Nobody's going to understand that
All right.
reference.
Yeah, but for real, that's it. Be at the Client Ascension event October 25th and 26th here in Tampa. Tickets are super cheap too. It's like the ticket for the actual event is $1,000. Right now we're running an early bird discount. It's $750 to be there on the 26th. If you also want to be there on the 25th, which is VIP day, which was probably the highlight of last year's event, it's $3K. It's going to be a smaller group. That's really if you're there for more business learnings and takeaways, because we're going to go more in depth with breakout sessions and masterminds with a smaller group of entrepreneurs who are obviously more qualified to be in the room because they're paying more money to be there. And so if you're going to make the trip to Tampa, you might as well extend your trip, be there for VIP day and the main event day for just a couple thousand more. That ticket right now is only $2,500 because it's discounted by $500 at the early bird right now. So we'll drop links somewhere, but if not, just DM one of us. We'll get you a link to buy a ticket.
And unless you're literally antisocial, like it's hard not to make money in the long run from an event. Like you just have a couple conversations and tell people about what you do, and you just
It's very organic.
yeah, 100% because everybody's trying to help each other out, right? So go to the event, you'll make a lot more money. It's the best. Time Magazine's calling it the write-off of the year. Tampa, Christian, you like Tampa as a city?
Very much.
Christian's in love with Tampa. He's a little bit tired right now and sleepy. We gotta get him some food and maybe
So
some
hungry.
coffee. But yeah,
That's pretty much it. Anything else, guys?
See you then.
All right. Peace.